She woke up married. Just 24 hours earlier, she'd been her father's daughter. Now she was someone's wife. And between those two moments, between the white dress and the gold ring and the promises made in front of everyone she'd ever known, something had happened that no one had quite prepared her for. The morning after her wedding night, she stood at a small kitchen sink in a borrowed cabin, trying to remember how to breathe. Her hands were shaking as she measured the coffee. Her smile felt painted on, and in her chest there was a question she couldn't ask anyone. Is this what it's supposed to feel like? This is a story that millions of women lived, but almost none of them ever told. It's about the morning that changed everything, the secrets that came with a wedding ring, the weight of becoming what everyone expected you to be while quietly wondering if you were doing it right. Because in 1950s America, there were things a good woman simply didn't speak of, not to her mother who'd raised her in careful silence, not to her friends who were performing the same role with the same forced brightness, and certainly not to her husband, sleeping peacefully in the next room, unaware of the storm inside her. So she kept it all locked away, the fears, the doubts, the tender, aching questions about love and marriage and who she was supposed to become. She smiled, she cooked breakfast, she learned to be a wife, and she carried her secrets for a lifetime. Until now. Welcome to Back Then with Truel. I'm Truel, and I'm so grateful you're here with us today. This channel is dedicated to uncovering the forgotten truths of mid-20th century American life, the moments that shaped our mothers and grandmothers, the experiences they lived through but rarely talked about, the human stories behind the perfect pictures we see in old photographs. Today, we're stepping into one of the most intimate, unspoken moments in a woman's life during the 1950s, the morning after her wedding night. We're going to talk about what she felt, what she feared, and what she could never say aloud. This is a story about vulnerability and strength, about the performance of perfection and the reality of being human, about the women who came before us and the weight they carried with such quiet grace. Before we begin, I want to invite you into our community. If stories like this touch your heart, if they help you understand the women who raised you, or remind you of a time that's slipping from memory, please consider subscribing to Back Then with Truel. Your subscription helps us preserve these stories, honor these voices, and keep this history alive for generations to come. Hit that subscribe button, and let's make sure these truths are never forgotten. Now let's go back to a small cabin with knotty pine walls and lace curtains, back to a morning filled with coffee and uncertainty and the weight of a brand new gold ring. Back to the moment she became a wife, and everything that came with it. This is 1950s Housewives' morning after, secrets she never shared. If you ever wondered what your mom or grandma's day was really like in the 1960s, what it felt like to wake up in a world without smartphones, without coffee pods, without even a snooze button, then you need to hear this story. Because for 24 hours, I stepped back in time. And what I discovered about those everyday life in the 1950s routines and the women who lived them absolutely changed everything I thought I knew about strength. It's 5:45 in the morning. And yes, you read that right. The vintage American life didn't start at 7 a.m. with a latte. It started before dawn. Because in the old American lifestyle, a housewife's day began before anyone else's, and it never really ended. My grandma used to tell me stories about her mornings, how she'd get up, put on lipstick before anyone saw her, and have breakfast ready before my grandpa even opened his eyes. I used to think she was exaggerating, But living like a 1960s American housewife for just one day? I owe her an apology. First rule of 1950s housewife life, you don't roll out of bed, you present yourself. Hair set in rollers the night before? Check. Full face of makeup before 6 a.m.? Check. And I'm talking the works. Foundation, powder, lipstick, the cat-eye liner that women in retro America memories swear by. Because even if you're scrubbing floors, you do it looking put together. And can we talk about the outfit? In the 1960s housewife routine, you didn't throw on yoga pants. You wore a dress. A fitted, belted, knee-length dress with an apron and pearls. Yes, pearls. To vacuum. I'm standing here in my kitchen at 6 a.m. looking like I'm about to host a dinner party, and I haven't even started the coffee yet. Now here's where the old days America reality hits you. The heels. I'm wearing 2-inch heels in my kitchen at 6 in the morning. And I'll be wearing them all day, because in the life in the 1960s USA, comfort was not the priority. Presenting was. My feet are already whispering threats at me, and I haven't even made breakfast yet. But here's what struck me as I stood there, dressed and ready before sunrise. These women didn't see this as a burden. This was their American nostalgia short version of self-respect. My grandma once told me, a woman who respects herself is respected by everyone. And in the vintage 1960s lifestyle, that started with how you showed up for your day. Breakfast in the 1960s American life wasn't a granola bar eaten in the car. It was a production. Eggs, fried in real butter. Bacon, thick cut and crispy. Toast, made from bread you might have baked yourself the day before. Orange juice, squeezed by hand. And coffee, percolated on the stove, not a Keurig in sight. I'm standing at the stove with a metal spatula, flipping eggs, and I'm thinking about something. In our world, we're so proud of our meal prep Sundays and our air fryers. But these women in the 1950s documentary short version of real life, they cooked 3 full meals a day, from scratch, every single day. No DoorDash, no frozen dinners. And here's the part that made me emotional. The table setting. Even for a Tuesday breakfast, the table was set properly. Plates, not paper. Cloth napkins, not paper towels. Everything had its place. There was a ceremony to it, a respect for the meal, for the family, for the moment. By 7 a.m., I've been awake for over an hour. I'm fully dressed and made up. Breakfast is on the table, and I'm wondering, could you do this? Could you wake up before dawn, put on heels and lipstick, and cook a full breakfast before most people hit snooze for the 3rd time? But the morning routine doesn't end with breakfast. Because in the nostalgic vintage video version of American life we're living today, there's no dishwasher. Everything is washed by hand, dried by hand, put away by hand. My manicure, which I did last night in authentic 1960s red, by the way, is already showing chips. I'm scrubbing an egg pan, and I'm thinking about the vintage memories of America that my mom shared with me. She said her mother's hands were always in water, washing dishes, washing clothes, washing floors, and I used to think that sounded so limiting. But standing here, doing this work with my own hands, I'm starting to understand something deeper. There was a meditation to it, a rhythm. In the 1950s nostalgia America that my family remembers, women didn't have podcasts or audiobooks to distract them. They had their thoughts, their prayers, their plans. This was their quiet time before the chaos of the day truly began. It's 7:30 a.m. now. In modern life, I'd be checking my phone, scrolling social media, responding to texts. But in the retro America 1960s I'm living today, the phone is attached to the wall in the kitchen. And you don't just call someone casually. Long distance costs money. Calls are short, purposeful, and rare. The isolation is real, but so is the presence. I'm not distracted by notifications. I'm fully here, in this moment, in this kitchen, doing this work. And there's something about that. Something the 1950s nostalgia music playing softly on my vintage radio is reminding me of that we've lost. By 8 a.m., the kitchen is spotless. My makeup is still perfect, well, mostly. My feet are already aching, and I'm looking at my to-do list for the day written on a piece of paper with a pen, because that's how it was done. No apps, no reminders, just a handwritten list of tasks that would make a modern productivity guru weep. So here's my question for you, and I really want you to think about this. These women ran entire households like this every single day. They were the CEOs of their homes, operating without technology, without help, often without even acknowledgement. So when we talk about the American nostalgia 1950s era, are we romanticizing it, or are we finally recognizing the incredible strength it required? Because I'm only 3 hours in and I'm already exhausted. But there's something else I'm feeling too, something unexpected. And I'll tell you what it is right after I tackle the mountain of laundry waiting for me. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Welcome back to the Back in 1950s Nostalgia Oldies Challenge that's teaching me humility one chore at a time. If you're just joining us, I'm living exactly like a 1960s housewife for 24 hours, and I'm discovering that the old days USA housewife had physical endurance that would put most modern gym routines to shame. It's 8:30 a.m. and I'm dusting. Not just running a Swiffer around, I mean actually dusting. Every surface, every knick-knack, every picture frame. Because in the life in the 1960s USA, a clean home wasn't just about hygiene, it was about pride, about showing that you cared for your family, about proving to yourself and your community that you were a capable woman. And then there's the vacuuming. This vintage vacuum weighs approximately 400 pounds. Okay, maybe 20, but it feels like 400. There's no Roomba driving itself around while I watch TV. I'm pushing this beast across every inch of carpet, and my arms are burning. But you know what? I'm starting to understand why the women in those vintage 1960s lifestyle photos always looked so strong and capable, because they were. At 9:15, I hit the task I've been dreading, the laundry. In the 1960s Housewife Challenge I've created for myself, I'm not using my modern washing machine. I'm using a wringer washer, the kind you see in nostalgias of decades past, where you physically feed each piece of clothing through rollers to squeeze out the water. My grandma had one of these. She did laundry for 6 people, twice a week, with this machine. I'm doing laundry for one person, for one day, and I'm sweating through my dress. The American nostalgia 1960s vibe is strong, but so is the reality check. This is hard work. Each piece has to be washed, run through the wringer, rinsed, run through the wringer again, and then hung outside to dry. We're talking probably 30 minutes of physical labor for one load of laundry. And in the 1960s daily life women experienced, there were no permanent press fabrics. Everything wrinkled, which meant everything had to be ironed. But here's where something beautiful happened. I'm standing outside hanging clothes on the line, and the wind is blowing and the sun is warm, and I'm thinking, when's the last time I was outside doing something productive? When's the last time I felt the sun on my face during a weekday morning? In the Retro America memories my mom shared, this was called fresh air and sunshine. Today, we call it getting our steps in. By 10 a.m., I'm moving to the kitchen for the task that defined a 1950s housewife life, cooking. Not just dinner, which I'll start prepping soon, but the constant, never-ending food preparation that kept families fed. In the 1960s era I'm recreating, convenience foods existed, but real women took pride in cooking from scratch. I'm making pot roast for dinner tonight. In our world, I'd use a slow cooker or Instant Pot. Set it and forget it. But in the vintage American life I'm living today, I'm browning the meat on the stove, chopping vegetables by hand, and yes, I already have a Band-Aid on one finger, building flavors layer by layer. This one meal will take me 3 hours of active work. But here's what I'm noticing. I know exactly what's in this food, every ingredient, every step. There's no label to read, no preservatives to worry about. In the everyday life in the 1950s that my family remembers, you knew your food because you made it. There was a security in that, a confidence. At 11 a.m., it's time for something that might surprise you, the grocery run. In the 1950s American life, you didn't do one big shopping trip per week. You went to the market almost daily, buying what you needed for that day's meals, because without giant refrigerators and freezers, you couldn't store much. And you didn't just run to the store in your pajamas, looking at you, modern America. In the old American lifestyle, going out in public meant you were representing yourself, your family, your home. Hair done, makeup fresh, outfit coordinated, and gloves, white gloves for a Tuesday grocery run, because standards. Walking into the market with my handwritten list, I'm seeing prices that want to make me cry. Ground beef, 49 cents a pound. Milk, 28 cents a quart. A dozen eggs, 35 cents. My entire grocery bill for pot roast, sides, and breakfast supplies for tomorrow is $8.42. But here's the catch that the Lagu Nostalgia 1950 songs don't tell you about. Wages were different too. A dollar went further, but women often didn't control the money. In the vintage 1960s lifestyle, many women received a household allowance from their husbands. They had to budget brilliantly, stretch every penny, and make miracles happen with limited resources. I'm paying with cash, no credit cards yet, and I'm doing math in my head, something that Tembang Nostalgia 1950 generation did automatically. Every purchase had to be justified, every expense considered. There was a weight to spending money that we've lost in our tap-to-pay world. Back home by noon, I'm unloading groceries and moving into the afternoon rhythm of the old days America housewife. The pot roast is in the oven, the house smells incredible, and I'm starting the task that every woman of that era dreaded but couldn't avoid, the ironing. In the 1960s housewife routine, you ironed everything: sheets, pillowcases, underwear, handkerchiefs, shirts needed perfect creases, dresses needed crisp pleats, and you did this in heels, standing for hours with an iron that weighed more than my laptop. I'm ironing my husband's work shirt. Okay, it's my brother's, but stay with me. And I'm thinking about the 1950s documentary short films that showed housewives smiling while ironing. They were not smiling. This is tedious, back-breaking work. My shoulders ache, my feet are screaming, but I'm getting why the American nostalgia short stories always mention how perfectly pressed everything was. Because it had to be. A man's shirt reflected on his wife's abilities. By 1 p.m., I'm starting to feel something unexpected. Exhaustion, yes, but also accomplishment. I can see the results of my work: the clean house, the laundry drying, the dinner cooking, the pressed clothes. In my modern life, I spend hours on email and Zoom calls, and often end the day wondering what I actually accomplished. But here, the evidence is everywhere. I'm sitting down for the first time since 5:45 a.m., 7 hours ago, and I'm having a sandwich and a glass of milk. In the retro America 1960s lifestyle, lunch wasn't a thing for housewives. You grabbed something quick between tasks, usually standing at the counter because sitting felt like wasting time. And here's where the challenge of the nostalgia experiment gets real. I'm exhausted, but I'm only halfway through the day. There's still dinner to finish, the table to set, the evening routine to manage. And I'm starting to understand something profound about the women who lived this everyday life in the 1950s reality. They were athletes. They were warriors. They ran marathons every single day, in dresses and heels, without water breaks or finish lines. And nobody gave them medals, nobody tracked their steps, nobody told them they were strong, but they were. Oh my gosh, they were incredibly strong. So could you do it? Could you work for 7 straight hours, in heels, without sitting, creating everything your family needed with your own 2 hands? Because I'm about to find out if I can make it through the evening, and what I discover about dinner time in the 1960s is going to surprise you.